Current events, new trends, and helpful products. Let's see what's in today's Cup of Poe.
Welcome to the Daily Cup of Poe, and I'm your host, Cindy Poe. And as always, I appreciate you taking time away to listen to what it is that I have to say. I know the value of time, and I will never take it for granted that you are spending and sharing your time with me. So let's grab a cup or a mug of your favorite beverage, and let's get into today's cup. This is episode 1. Yep, this is the launch episode of Daily Cup of Poe, and I'm very excited to begin this journey with you. And I want to start with a reminder to say, please follow this podcast. Yes, we're calling it a podcast. See what I did there. And also to invite you to go to justanamericangirl.com. That's my blog site. Please subscribe there with your email to get weekly updates. Now, my promise to you is that I will never send more than one email a week. No one needs to hear from anyone in their inbox every single day. Definitely not more than once a week. So this is just to stay in touch, not to invade your life. And on another note, all of the things that I'm going to reference here in the show, all the links will be found in the show notes. So let's get going. So this being the first episode, there would be no way that I could start a podcast in this time right now without talking about COVID-19, of course. And I do want to talk a little bit about the science of it, what's happening with the lockdown and all of that. But I also want to start off by talking about the podcast itself and why I wanted to start a podcast. And for those of you who follow me on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and especially if you are a conservative like I am, you'll note that it's been a little difficult to continue to get information from our favorite conservative newscasters and social warriors, as I like to call them, the everyday person who's putting out information. And it's getting harder and harder to keep those posts on the top of your feed. So I was posting quite a bit, as you can imagine, during this whole COVID-19 thing, and I was getting a lot of inbox messages from followers who were saying they were wondering where I was because they weren't seeing a lot of my posts. So I assumed that algorithms and other things were keeping me from being visible. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is to take it to your own site. So that's the point of the podcast and the blog, is all the information that I want to share with you, all the information that you guys are asking me to look into. I get so many Facebook Messenger questions about, what do you think about this? Can you look into this? Is this true? I mean, because I know a lot of people don't have the time to do a lot of research. I do encourage you to do your research. Don't even take my word for things. But generally speaking, when I talk to you about something, I've researched it pretty well. And so I get a lot of inbox messages from people asking me questions about things that they've heard, things they've read, videos they've seen. And so I wanted to bring all of that information to my own site. So that way it can't be taken down by Facebook, Twitter. It can't be hidden through Google. YouTube can't block it. This is my own sites. The podcast is dailycupofpoe.com, and my blog is justanamericangirl.com. And again, I'll have those links for you in the show notes. So I want to encourage you to subscribe and take a listen to what it is that I have to say. Now, I'm going to talk a lot about conservative politics, but I'm also going to cover a lot of completely bipartisan issues like health and wellness, of course. For those who follow me know that that's a huge part of of my background. We're going to talk about some cool new trends, some apps that I find really helpful in life, especially now with all the craziness that's going on. We're going to talk about family stuff. And I'm even going to do a movie, documentary, book review as we go through the days and the weeks of the podcast, because I think that it's important to have our conversation encompass everything around your life. So if you're not a conservative and you disagree with me on political views and religious views, that's okay. I'm sure we can find some common ground elsewhere. And you never know that you might hear something that might make you think about things a little differently. And that's what I always encourage. I talk about this a lot, about being Trump jaded. And, in this time with everything that's going on, we're seeing such obvious Trump jadedness. And I mean this from both sides, whether you are a Democrat, liberal, of course they have that, everything Trump says is wrong, orange man bad, that mentality that he could be telling you really great information and you're just simply not going to believe it because he's Trump. And that's Trump jaded. Because let's face it, there is not a person alive who everything, well, I shouldn't say there isn't a person alive, but the fact of the matter is not everything that Trump does is wrong and not everything that he does is right. He doesn't always lie. And he doesn't always exactly tell the truth. He sometimes exaggerates a lot, and that is his style. He's a very optimistic. He's a winning kind of guy, and it's like having that coach who's going to tell you, you can win the game. You can win the game, even if you think that there's not a chance. He's going to be that cheerleader for you. But when you have those Trump jaded glasses and you think that everything he says is bad because someone is telling you to think that, because they're taking things out of context and making it seem like it fits their agenda, that's Trump jaded. And I encourage you to take off the Trump jaded glasses and listen to the actual real words and look into things. And it goes on the other side too. If you are someone who is a conservative, you are on the right side, don't fall for the Trump jaded that you're so quick to want to defend him that you believe everything that he says and you take everything as at his word without looking into it. You still have to do your research. I'm a fan of President Trump. That is not a secret. I believe a lot of what he has done has been so amazing, and there have been things that he's done that I've questioned. But you have to always look at everything from both sides and do your own research. So that's my little Mama Pose speech about the Trump jaded and not to be Trump jaded. So we're going to segue from that into a couple of things that I wanted to talk to my, I guess mostly to my conservative audience, the ones who will be interested in this. But again, I'm going to say to my Democrat friends, my liberal friends, that, check some of the stuff out. It has some interesting concepts behind it. And maybe you might even find some points for your arguments. Who knows? I don't know, but I find it very interesting. So again, all the links that I talk about will be in the show notes, but I wanted to make sure that all of my conservative friends were aware that there is an app that you can download, the Trump 2020 app. You can download it onto your phones from either Google or from your Apple apps store, your app store. And what makes it an important thing to have is you're going to get a lot of newscasts. You're going to get a lot of information with that conservative viewpoint, because it is getting increasingly more difficult to find someone who will report on what the president is doing honestly. And so I want to encourage you to download the app. It's the Trump 2020 app, like I said, and there are, for my my fellow conservative women friends, there are some great shows that are being produced by some very strong conservative women, brilliant minds, great talking points, and I would encourage you to listen. They have a fantastic show called The Right View, kind of a flip, if you will, on the very liberal message of The View that is on television. This is the conservative flip of that, and it's very interesting. And I'm just going to take a minute here to share with you the preview from that particular show. So let's see if we can get this to work correctly. Here we go.
Trump campaign is now reaching voters online.
You are seeing the President of the United States. Look at the lines. You join our movement. A lot of President Trump supporters here. Greatest movement in the history of our country.
I think the one thing we can say they all have in common is they are fighters, both figuratively and literally.
We are leaders in our communities, going to ensure that President Trump gets reelected soundly in November.
Because we have such strong leadership coming from the White House, we are making it through.
God has called President Trump for this purpose in this time, so let's keep voting for him, and we will keep winning.
I honestly don't know why Joe Biden is running. He can't remember anything.
President Trump has been a champion for families and in particular for mothers.
And he ran on, I'm going to build a wall.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will make America great again.
Welcome to Team Trump Online.
Wednesday just got better because the ladies are live discussing the hottest topics of the week with you tonight.
And we will make America great again.
Good evening, everyone. Well, you've heard of The View, but welcome to The Right View. You see what we did there. I'm Laura Trump, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign. We have a fantastic panel tonight of brilliant women who have been working tirelessly on President Trump's campaign.
So that is just a fun little example of what you can find there in those shows. And they are talking about hard-hitting topics. And you got to remember, these are very smart, brilliant, conservative women who are moms, wives, and they are just doing the best that they can to make America great, just like our president, and to keep things going well for families. So I hope that I will put the link to the Trump app in the show notes, and I hope that you will use that's my personal link. So make sure that you are clicking on that to download that right to your phone. Also, I want to talk about the upcoming election. I mean, this is an election year. We're going to have to talk about it. And I think that it's really important that we stay competitive. I truly believe that President Trump is going to win in a landslide. But let's not forget, we have senators and we have members of Congress or members of the House who are up for re-election, and some new people who are challenging some of the Democratic seats. And we want to support all of them. And Win Red is the donation platform for the Republican Party. Now, I have set up our own team, Ride the Red Wave, for raising money for the National Republican Committee. And again, in the show notes, I will put a link to that donation, to that team platform. And if you feel compelled to donate money to help the candidates out in this race. It's very important that we not only retain the Senate, but perhaps even get some more seats in the Senate and, of course, in the House. So as I was saying, in the show notes, there will be a link to my team page. So $5, $10, if you can give $100, that would be fantastic. And what I have done on my team's platform is I have chosen how the funds will be spread out amongst the candidates. Some of the money I have, going to the Republican committees in states like California, that we want to support them so much because there's so many Republicans there, so many conservatives there that really need a voice. So, and then of course some individuals who are running, and but it's a really cool platform. You can set up a team so that you can make sure that the funds that you are raising through your team are being distributed amongst those that you actually support, because believe it or not, I do not support all of the Republicans who are running. I'm hoping that there's going to be some challengers for some of these seats, because I think we have, for as much as I think the Democrats are a do-nothing party right now, simply because there is a Republican president, I truly believe that the Democrats don't want anything fantastic to happen under President Trump's watch, so they're very reluctant to vote to change things, which is why we really need to we need to get the House back, we need to retain the Senate, and of course keep the presidency. But as much as I believe that the Democrats are right now a do-nothing party, I also believe that there are some Republicans that are not representing the people of America and the Constitution very well. So there are some that will not be receiving funds from my campaign to raise money for Republicans, and a lot of them are being challenged, and I hope that through those primaries we're going to see some change happening, and that would be really good. So again, please check the show notes for the donation clip. So the Right View, you want to support that and download the Trump 2020 app, and sharing the wealth with the WinRed. As much as I don't like for there to be a lot of money in politics, it does cost money to keep people on staff and to do commercials, and we know that Donald Trump is going to need, and along with a lot of Republicans, are going to require a lot of advertising to go through social medias and things like that. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole ride takes us this year through November. And I know that we have, I just saw the other day, I had to laugh, and I'm sure everyone got this joke immediately when it happened, but I guess candidate Joe Biden wanted to play the Trump game and come up with a nickname for his opponent, and he said that he calls the President Tweety, and I'm sure that's because, as he says, it's because he tweets all the time, and he thinks that he shouldn't be tweeting. He should be tending to this crisis, which, of course, we all know that he's working. I can't imagine that the man's getting any sleep. He's working all the time to make things happen. But I just found it funny that he chose President Tweety, because I'm old enough to remember when Tweety and Sylvester cartoons were the most popular cartoons on TV, and Tweety Bird was always the smart one and outsmarted the cat. Cat never got Tweety Bird, so Tweety was the winner. So I am perfectly fine with our president being referred to as President Tweety. I think that, again, it just goes back to the deplorables. Proud to be a deplorable. If that's what you think that I am, because I care about America and the Constitution, then by all means, I will wear my deplorable wear and be proud to proclaim that. So we're learning that the Democrats are not very good with they're not very piffy with things. They're not very good at that, but bless their hearts for trying, I suppose. So, again, I just want to reiterate that as I'm talking about things, I am not always on the side of the conservatives, and not even the president all the time. There are things that I disagree with, but I will tell you, during this crisis, I think that the Republicans and the president have done a stand-up job, and I'm proud to support them. I want to talk a little bit about conspiracy theories, because I'm hearing that so much now, because now in the news we have Obamagate is coming out, and whether or not you want to believe that President Obama was the greatest president of all times, or whether you, like me, think that he was kind of a dud, not much really happening there. He didn't create much of anything. And again, this all goes back to your views. I'm very conservative when it comes to fiscal matters, and Democrats just generally aren't. So I'm not going to generally be okay with most Democrat policies, because they always want to spend way too much money, and you're going to say, well, we're the deficit, all this. But in the midst of all this, with the deficit going up, especially now with COVID, we're also creating a lot of money, a lot of jobs. Before this COVID came around, remember, we were at our economy was just the best ever. It was the best economy that we've ever seen, definitely the best economy I've seen in my lifetime. And I've been on this earth for more than half of a century, and it was an amazing economy. It was very unsettling to have this unexpected crisis come, and that's what a crisis is. This isn't anything that we did. We didn't cause this. But this came along, and it crushed this economy. But while this crisis is going on, there's a lot of other parallel things happening. And you really have to look for those, because when you watch the news, you're just seeing, coronavirus. And we still have to talk about manufacturing jobs and how the president is deregulating things so that we can actually, move faster to get jobs and get things happening more. And I am all for that. But aside from all the really great things that this president and this administration are striving to accomplish, we're also still in the midst of all the backlash from, the Russia investigation and the Ukraine investigation that led to impeachment, all of that stuff. And so Obamagate has come from this Russia investigation. And whether you are a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whatever your views are, you have to agree that having a sitting president spy on the incoming, on a candidate and then incoming president is unacceptable. That cannot happen. Could you imagine if Trump actually wiretapped Joe's basement, to hear things, or had him unmasked in meetings, or any of these things? I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that people are not outraged by this. I wouldn't care who it was. If President Trump was wiretapping someone, having his DOJ, his FBI, the CIA wiretap someone, I would be infuriated by that, because as Americans, that is not part of our fiber. That is not what we do. So Obamagate is coming out of all this. And from all this, we're hearing this word conspiracy theory come up so often. And I just want to challenge that conspiracy theory idea. I want to challenge that a little bit. And this is what I mean by that. Whenever I hear someone call something a conspiracy theory, it just makes my mind go to, it makes my mind start thinking if they're this upset about this thought process and they want to shut it down, because when you call something a conspiracy theory, they're looking to shut it down. So if they're looking to shut it down, that just makes me feel like there's a there. Just makes me feel like there is something there. So this conspiracy theory, this talk about conspiracy theory, I just want to encourage all of you to not let that hinder you from researching and listening to it. Because conspiracy theory, just simply as far as I'm concerned, conspiracy theories are critical thinking. It's you're taking like a subject and you're like, well, what if it was that, what if it were this? Let's go look and see if this is what it was, especially if we're talking about something that is so devastating to the Constitution or our freedoms or our God-given rights. We need to question it. And I think conspiracy theories are just critical thinking and people questioning what is actually happening. So, I'm old enough to remember the conspiracy theories about Kennedy's assassination. So I just want to encourage you to don't worry about people who are saying it's just a conspiracy theory and we're going to shut it down. Still go in search of it. And that's sort of my platform is I'm going to search out the conspiracy theories. I'm going to talk about them. And it's another reason that I want to have my own platform to do it. Because if you mention Pizzagate or you mention the Illuminati or you mention false flags, YouTube is going to take your videos down. That's what they're going to do. So I want this to be on my platform so that you can always find it. We can always have a discussion about it. And let's get to some truth. Let's find out what's really real, not just what you want to be real. Let's find out what's really real. Let's talk about the deep state. Because whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the deep state is not on your side. The deep state is only on their side. And that's something that's always fascinated me, that people, it's just amazing that people will pick sides when it's like you're picking a side that's actually against you, that actually doesn't really want you to do better and wants to control you. Why would you want to be on that team? So I want to be able to talk about all those things. Another thing that I'm going to do on my site, and we've seen it happen so much now with this COVID-19, is you see all these videos from physicians who are questioning the decision-making about COVID-19, as well they should. Everyone should question. We should always question. We should always question. And all of these videos are being made by these physicians and people questioning it, and they'll put the videos up and YouTube will take them down. We share them on social media and they're taken down. I personally go and make copies of all of those videos that get taken down. I'll find them and I'll make a copy, and I'm going to have a page that you're going to be able to view those. You're going to be able to view those anytime you want to, because I think it's extraordinarily unfair to silence somebody just because they have a different opinion. Even if the information, people are like, well, they're just trying to keep false information from being told. Well, first of all, you have to prove that it's false, and nobody has proved that they're false. They're just a different opinion, and we're all adults here. We can make up our own minds, So when you have a government or entities that are trying to stop you from thinking and hearing things and they want to make decisions for you, that is a big flag for me. So I want those videos to be able to be seen. Even if we find out they're not true, it's still important to have the different opinions so that you can ask questions intelligently. And that brings me to the whole thing about trust the science. Trust the science. We hear that a lot during this COVID-19. We have to trust the science. But what science are you trusting? Are you only trusting the science that agrees with what you want the truth to be, or are you looking outside the box and listening to some other opinions of science? Because the one thing about science that we know is science is often wrong. As a health and wellness coach, how many times have things changed just in the little over a decade that I've been in the health and wellness industry? How much has changed just in that amount of time? And I can remember even growing up, you had scientists talking about the food pyramid. Now, how fast did that change? I can remember a time when cholesterol was the big thing everyone talked about, and eggs, you couldn't eat eggs, never eat an egg yolk. Are you crazy? You'll die if you eat an egg yolk. So, science is often wrong. Even in this COVID-19, we have heard a lot of differing viewpoints from the same people that you're saying, listen to because they're the science and we got to follow the science, are the same people who said back in January, it's really no big deal. It's going to be like the flu. It's not that contagious. Americans have nothing to worry about. Dr. Fauci said that. Don't worry about masks. You don't need to wear masks. And now all of a sudden, you're the meanest person in the whole world if you won't put a mask on your face. I personally don't want to put a mask on because here's a little CPO fact you may not be aware of, but I'm extremely claustrophobic, very claustrophobic. And the idea of having, like, even in the wintertime, I don't wear face masks when I'm out in the snow and stuff. I don't wrap my scarf around my face because I don't even like winter because the clothes are so confining. So for me, that's just anxiety waiting to happen. So I'm not thrilled about putting a mask on. And to be quite honest with you, I don't really see the benefit of it. I've done a lot of research and looked at things, and I'm not 100% convinced that it's going to help because, in New York, they are making it's mandatory. You couldn't go into a store, you couldn't go anywhere without a mask, but their numbers still were increasing and they were wearing masks. So something's not quite right with that science, but believing the science is something that you need to, take with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think that you can believe science, but you can also compare science. And I think it's important to listen to all the physicians, even the ones that are disagreeing with the ones that are in the limelight. Let's talk about Dr. Fauci for a second. Sure, he is an expert in his field. I believe that he truly believes everything he's saying. I think he thinks that he has facts on his side because he's looked at the research of this. But I was struck by this when I listened to the exchange by Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci during the hearing. And, everyone acted like they had this giant fight, and I didn't see it that way. I saw two different opinions being discussed. And Rand Paul said that Dr. Fauci is not the end of the conversation with what to do in response to the COVID-19. And Dr. Fauci even agreed. He said, I'm a scientist. I'm looking at scientific data. I'm not I'm not an economist. That is not the angle that I'm coming at. I'm coming at the science of it, the lab science. And I got to thinking about Rand Paul in this situation, because I don't know if you remember this, but Rand Paul actually contracted coronavirus. He actually was a coronavirus patient. And him contracting this virus was a really big deal because I believe it was last year or maybe the year before. It was within the recent past. I think it was sometime last year. He was attacked by his neighbor, which that's a whole crazy conversation we can have later. But he was attacked by his neighbor, and he went to the hospital, and his lung was so injured they had to remove part of his lung. So him contracting the coronavirus was a really big deal. This was very serious for him. And luckily he recovered from the virus. And then after his recovery, he actually went into the hospitals because Rand Paul is a physician. And yes, I know people are like, well, he's an eye doctor. He's a doctor. Okay. It's like, I don't know. It's that whole demeaning thing that people have to do. Rand Paul is a doctor. He's a doctor. He's a physician. And he went into the hospitals to help with the patients. And, Rand Paul as a member of Congress, he's seeing all of the economics of this. He's seeing all of the business decisions. He's seeing a lot more than the average person. So you think about this. Dr. Fauci, who is very good at his field as a scientist, looking through the microscope, but how many people has he been with who had coronavirus as a patient? How many doctors or nurses has he went to the actual hospitals that were caring for the large numbers of patients and talked to them? What about the hospitals that have seen practically no COVID patients come in because they've all been handling it at home? And we have that because doctors and nurses are being laid off across the country because they don't have any patients. They have no one coming in. Rand Paul, who is, of course, a member of Congress, okay, so he has that whole viewpoint, but he also had the virus, and he saw patients, and he was in the hospitals with the doctors and nurses. So if you were going to listen to someone's broad opinion about something, Rand Paul would be a great example, I think, of someone to listen to, because he's got a lot of angles that he's piecing all together, whereas Dr. Fauci is motivated by what he's seen in data and microscope. And people are different than data. That's just always the fact of it. We have to remember why we are in this position. I think, what is the saying that politicians never let a good crisis go to waste, especially if you are the underdog. And right now, that's the Democrats. They don't have the presidency. So they're going to use this crisis for politics, which is just disgusting and sick, and I hate it. I don't like, the scare tactics and the demeaning of people in a crisis, I'm talking about the crisis right now, using this to scare people into seeing your view. I don't think that is fair. I guarantee you that if we had President Obama right now, the Democrats would all be saying, oh, it's fine, it's awesome, he's doing a great job, don't worry, it's going to be fine, go to work, keep the economy going. They were not going to want the economy to be bad under a President Obama, and I truly believe that. Now, I think it was very brave of President Trump to do what he did by stopping the travel to China. I don't believe that would have ever happened, and I think our numbers would have been way worse. But basically, the whole taking a crisis and playing it for your team is just a sad, sad thing to do, because people are dying of this virus. The virus is real. But you got to remember, the crisis isn't the virus. The crisis is what the virus has done. The crisis is what has happened to our economy. The crisis is what it's, creating, and the Democrats are using this crisis to further their agenda, and they have shown that in the HEROES Act. Now, there's this thing going around social media showing the things that are in the HEROES Act, and it all looks wonderful. But the HEROES Act is over 1,800 pages long, and that little one page of hit points that you're seeing is not all that's in there. There are very questionable things in this bill, and I do not understand why we cannot just have a clean bill. If you want to just further helping the American people economically, just make a bill about that. We shouldn't be talking about the post office. We shouldn't be talking about voting in November. We don't even, that is a discussion we can have in, September, October. We don't need to have that conversation right now. So I think we need to step back from those things where they're using the crisis as a platform, and realize that the crisis is everything that is going on. And we, like I said, this whole, never failing to waste a crisis for political gain just has to be stopped on either side. I don't care which side you're on. You don't use the death of Americans, for your political gain. You don't get to say the blood of 90,000 Americans are on Trump's hands, because let's face it, the blood is on the hands of China for not, and the World Health Organization for not giving us the correct information, because they did not. And if you think that they did, then you're not doing your research like I tell you to do all the time. So, we have to realize that what the crisis really is, and we have to realize the best ways to get through it. And what the Trump administration is trying to do is get us back to the normal. And I don't even want to hear about this new normal. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the world evolves and we're always changing, but the new normal it cannot be what this is. Living constantly 6 feet apart, wearing masks, sanitizing everything. I am of the belief, Dr. Shiva, I listen to what he's saying and I research what he's, I take the information he gives and I go and research, and he's absolutely right about our immune systems. We have to build up our immune systems. Why isn't anyone talking about that? Why isn't anyone in the news talking about how to boost your immune system, so maybe if you do come in contact with this coronavirus, it won't be so detrimental? Let's talk about vitamin D. Even the World Health Organization has released a paper, and I'll actually put the link in the show notes to this, where they're saying that they're linking vitamin D deficiencies to the mortality rate of the coronavirus. And, but people aren't talking about that. The hydroxychloroquine, we just found out that President Trump has been taking hydroxychloroquine. And I was actually watching the briefing when he announced that. I think I actually literally heard the heads explode of all the media. It was a very, very loud explosion. And they have been having a hissy fit over the fact that the man, who is a grown adult person who has talked with his own physician, the White House physician, and the White House physician agreed that he was safe to take the hydroxychloroquine. And if you go back and you listen to the briefing, he was doing it to prove a point that was being made by somebody who sent him, said, I'm giving this to patients, I'm having great results. And so he wanted to take it as a preventative. He's around a lot of people, and he wanted to see, it's, to me, it was like he was taking a bullet for us. Let me try it. You know what? I'm not going to tell you that you should trust the physicians who are willing to give the hydroxychloroquine. Let me take it. And you're hearing people now say, oh, he's lying, he's not taking it. I mean, come on. Like, this is the Trump jaded thing that I'm talking about. The man wouldn't have said he was taking it if he wasn't taking it. So I think it's really interesting. And let's face it, the hydroxychloroquine is a very, if it turns out to be effective, and it looks like it is. I mean, I live over here in the UK, and I know in France, the vast majority of the people are treating their patients with hydroxychloroquine and Z-Pak, and even zinc is being, like, that word's being coming around a lot, and they're having great success with that. The people that they treated with the hydroxy got better really quickly. So, but because we're Trump jaded, because he says he's taking it, when he said it way back in the day, way back in the beginning of this, and everybody's like, oh, he shouldn't be, he's not a physician. Well, it's like, but he's surrounded by them, and he reads, and he can have an opinion about something. And let's face it, he's right. And oftentimes Donald Trump is right, whether you like him or not, and whether you like it or not. Donald Trump is right so often that it's almost funny. And I attribute that to the fact that he reads a lot. I do know this about him. I've been a fan. I've followed Donald Trump since I was in my 20s. I went to business talks that he gave at colleges, and I've always been fascinated by him because he's, first of all, very funny and very personable, but he just says it like it is. And anybody who knows me knows that I am very much like that. I am, in my health and wellness business, I am the Jillian from Biggest Loser. I don't sugarcoat it. It's like this whole thing with people being offended. My whole motto is, if you hang out with me long enough, I'm going to offend you, because I'm very outspoken. I just say things the way they are. I'm not going to on purpose try to hurt your feelings, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat things that I think need to be just said. And that's the way Donald Trump is. He just says things as they are. And, half the time you can laugh it off, and half the time he's right. Like, he has been so incredibly right. So turns out with this hydroxychloroquine that he could be right. And I think he's going to be right about the opening up. And that brings me back to the new normal. It's going to be a new normal in the fact that we got through all of this crisis. We've gotten through crisis before. We've gotten through lots of them. 9/11 was devastating, but we got through that. The thing to remember about the crisis, or about a crisis, is that the way to get through it, the best way to get through it, is together. We can have different opinions and we can have different ideas, but we all want things to get better. So what I want to not see anymore is, I don't want the people who are, clamoring and just so excited to get back to work and open up restaurants and businesses so that we can get back to normal. I don't want those people pointing fingers at the people who disagree with them and saying, well, you just don't care about the economy, or you're lazy, you just want to sit at home, because that's not the case. They're probably very concerned. Now, there's probably some people who are pretty lazy. I saw a post the other day and I had to just keep scrolling and not talk, not answer or not comment on it, where the person was saying, is it just me, or am I really sad to see things opening up? I was really liking my life like this, locked up. Yeah, I'm going to go with, you're probably not, you're probably pretty alone in that, because I think most people really want to get back to, some form of a life. Now, I think that there's probably some life lessons we could take away from this crisis, and we can talk about that. But the people who want to get back to work, and the people who want things to open and want businesses to get back to being businesses, because the longer we stay closed, the less likely that those places are going to open or stay open. And we're going to be just like in Demolition Man, where every restaurant was Taco Bell because that was the only one that survived the crisis. So every restaurant was Taco Bell in Demolition Man. That's telling you how old I am. That's a really old movie, Sylvester Stallone movie, if you haven't seen it. And it was all about, the big earthquake and how that big crisis, out of that, only Taco Bell lasted, and they had all these new rules about everything was illegal. You couldn't curse. It was illegal to curse. Anything that made people sad or feel bad was illegal, and I feel like that is like where we're trying to get to at some point. And just like in the movie, it does not work out. You have people who want their freedoms. So the people who do want things to open, we have to understand that there are people who are legitimately concerned about the health and well-being of themselves and their loved ones, and that's fine. But those same people who are concerned about the health and well-beings of themselves and their loved ones have to realize that those who want things to open, they're not wanting to kill your grandma. I'm tired of, I've had that said to me so many times during this crisis. Oh, you care more about money than you care about people. Well, of course that is not true. But I want to know where everyone was with all this concern for the past, umpteen years, where 40 to 80,000 people were dying every year for influenza. Where are all the people when the statistics on car crashes come out? Why are we, when people, I often think about the analogy of the car when people start talking about gun control. Now, again, I'm a conservative, and I'm a believer in the Constitution, and I believe that Second Amendment is, or that, I just think that it's just really important that we understand what the right to bear arms means. It wasn't the right to bear arms except for, that's not what it is. And I understand that technology continues on, but technology is always going to continue on. And you cannot unarm a citizen thinking that's going to stop criminal behavior. It doesn't make sense to take away, and that's a whole nother show, which we will talk about, but you can't think that taking away legally and legal rights from a law-abiding person is going to make the criminals not still do the illegal thing. I mean, that it makes no sense whatsoever. But it's like when people start talking about making guns illegal and taking them away. Well, what about cars? Way more people are killed by cars. Why can't we say, okay, no one can make a car that goes faster than 35 miles an hour? Let's, I used to in high school drive a bus, and they put governors on the cars or on the buses so that they couldn't go above a certain speed. Let's make cars where that you can't kill people with them. I mean, so my point is that when we're talking about the deaths due to coronavirus, you have to be willing to take that conversation on further beyond this crisis then. And I think it's important to realize that by saying things like, oh, well, they care more about money than they care about people, that is not a valid point. If anything, it's proving your point. It's disproving your point, because obviously no one wants someone to die. So, but we are also logical people, logical beings, and we can see that there is a way to do things and do them correctly. Look at Florida, look at Georgia. They're doing very well. I saw a phenomenal response from DeSantis with the media the other day, and he had just had enough of their fake media, and it was good to see him stand up to them, because he's doing a phenomenal job in Florida, and the people of Florida should be very happy with the outcome of what's happening there, and in Georgia as well. And I know even President Trump was a little hard on the governor of Georgia, and I did not agree with President Trump being hard on him. I wanted to stick by him, by the governor, and it turns out that things are going really well. So I think that we have to remember why we're where we are and why we're in this lockdown, and when this happened, because remember, in January, this virus was not that big of a deal. And you can argue with me if you want, but I can show you videos of Democrats. I can show you videos of Dr. Fauci. I can show you videos of everyone in January and February saying this is no big deal. Americans don't have to worry. All through New York, all over, in San Francisco with Pelosi during the Chinese New Year. And I'm not blaming them, because they didn't know it was a big deal. We didn't know what the big deal was, but it was Chinese New Year, and we're going to support that community. So come on down to Chinatown and enjoy the restaurants and the festivals, crammed, packed with people. Even here in Manchester, Joe and I went out for Chinese New Year to a restaurant, fantastic, and enjoyed our Chinese New Year meal. But that was before anybody knew what the issues were. Even in March, when we started going, here's a problem, we still weren't sure. The science still hadn't caught up to all this yet. But, the lockdowns are happening. But the reason that the lockdown started in the first place, and I remember this very clearly, and I will happily pull the videos to show you, the whole point that Dr. Fauci was making, the whole point that the CDC was making, the World Health Organization was making for these lockdowns all across the world, Italy, all these places, was because we needed to flatten the curve, because our healthcare systems were going to be overrun. We weren't going to have enough hospital beds. We weren't going to have enough doctors and nurses. And if the doctors and nurses got sick, we were going to be even in a bigger problem. But we were going to have this problem because it was also flu season. We were still in the middle of flu season, which, remember, flu season takes anywhere from 40 to 80,000 lives every year, according to the CDC. 40 to 80,000. I've looked back at statistics over years. It could be anywhere from 40 to 80,000 cases or deaths due to influenza. So with the combination of flu season, all the other natural health occurrences, heart attacks, diabetes, the medical problems with diabetes, accidents, all these other things, and then you put a COVID-19, this new very contagious virus that affects, the most vulnerable population, the older population, the people with underlying health issues, that was going to overrun the healthcare system. So we need to stay at home until we can get through the flu season and get the curve flattened. And we've accomplished that. Now, if you think that we should continue going until this virus is gone, then be prepared to have no world to come back to. And that is what I don't agree with Dr. Fauci about, and what I do agree with what Rand Paul was saying during that exchange that they had. Yes, the coronavirus is there, and yes, probably still people are going to die, and that's very sad, and I wish that people didn't have to die, but somehow someone is still going to contract it. Even in a lockdown, we've seen that they're still going to contract it, and they're still going to die, but the numbers are going to be lower, and we're going to be able to save the world. It's the risk that I don't agree with. It's the level of the risk that I don't agree with. I think the risk is a lot smaller. I think now as the doctors and as the Surgeon General and as President Trump has said, and even the CDC has said, we know how to handle it now. So when people do come and we do have a little surge, we know how to put those, President Trump calls them embers. We know how to put those little embers out, because now we know what we're dealing with and we know how to handle it. So I think to ever get back to any kind of normalcy, we have to start doing it now before the next flu season comes. And that's what I think we have to think about. So just going to wrap this up here, but I just want to make sure that, like I said, you are doing your own research. I'm going to always give lots and lots of links when in my blogs and stuff. I'm going to have lots of information there of trails for you to follow, videos for you to watch, people to listen to. I'm also going to be doing this big plan, this big bulletin board that I'm putting together for the 2020 elections, because I know everybody is focusing on President Trump, and we certainly want him to win, but we have a lot of senators, we have some Congress members of the House that we need to make sure that we are putting good people in there. So stay tuned with me. Go and subscribe to my blog at justanamericangirl.com, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast at Daily Cup of Poe. And I'm going to leave you, as I always do, with Mama Poe's invitation to be fearless, be gracious, be authentic. Peace out, everyone.